there, fictional friends, and welcome to another episode of Fully Booked. I'm Megan.
And I'm Sherine.
And I'm sure that everybody's well aware what we would be talking about this week. Come on now.
Wuthering.
Yeah, let's be real. What the hell else were we going to have a chat about this week? Come on.
Oh, there was so much hype leading, and you know what? I was like, is this too much hype? Is it enough hype? Like, I kind of went back and forth because I'm like, I get it. There's like big actors in the film, so like
Sure.
that makes sense, you know?
Yeah, so obviously this week we're talking about Emerald Fennell's most recent adaptation of the novel Wuthering Heights with quotations around it. Yes, we're all well aware of why that's the case. I think we were from the time that the first trailer dropped, honestly. So this was just released on February 13th. We both went and saw it. And yeah, so I think because of all of the discourse around this, even prior to the release of the film, I was like, okay, I'm going to reacquaint myself with this story in like a more serious way, like not just like, oh yeah, I vaguely remember what the plot points were and who all of the characters were and all that kind of stuff. So I had like an entire week. So I watched 2 other adaptations of this book. I did a little bit of reading, and I also listened to a portion of the audiobook to refresh my memory about a lot of things as well. So just to kind of like get back into it and get myself kind of in the headspace of like, okay, what actually happens in the book? Because we all know that the movie is not going to be what actually happens in the book. I think we kind of were well aware of that going in. So, so that gave me kind of an opportunity to do so. So I actually did. So, okay, just brief background. If we can do a little English lit lesson for no reason.
Yes, please.
Just for fun. So obviously, the Brontë sisters are extremely well regarded for having written some of like probably the most famous works of classic literature that exist
by women,
but yeah, particularly by female authors. So Emily wrote Wuthering Heights, and it was her only novel that was published. It was published in 1847, initially under her pseudonym or her pen name of Ellis Bell when she originally published it. This was in 1847, and unfortunately, Emily would pass away in 1848, a year later at age 30, after having caught a really bad cold. I love that this is what life was back at the time, but caught a really bad cold at her brother's funeral, if I'm not mistaken, which may have exacerbated possibly existing tuberculosis. So that's what happened there. And refusing
quite common at the time.
Yes, and refusing medical care. Anyway, so that's what happened with that. She would unfortunately never get to see the success that the novel would eventually have. It wasn't originally incredibly well regarded when it came out because the characters were seen as quite immoral and very harsh, very brash, which wouldn't have been something that you would have seen very frequently at the time. Again, particularly not from a female author. So it wasn't until a little bit later that, the novel actually became a bit better regarded. If I'm not mistaken, her sister, Charlotte Brontë, who wrote Jane Eyre, would do a kind of a bit of a revamp, re-edit of the novel, which I think was republished in 1850, so a few years later, basically. So that's just very vague, whatever kind of background about that, but just as like a heads up, that's kind of what it is. The novel obviously largely deals with themes of generational trauma, and how the trauma that we experience in our childhood follows us into adulthood and creates the kind of people that we become later on in life. Obviously, very heavy themes of things like racism, of course, which are very prominently featured in the book in the way that the character of Heathcliff is treated. Obviously, I don't really need to elaborate. It's been every single place on the internet will tell you that in the novel, Heathcliff is not a white man. He's of vaguely ambiguous racial ancestry. From what I can see, the majority of the consensus seems to be that at the very, very, very base whitest level, he's Romani. But at the probably furthest, more correct, maybe closer to what the actual character was meant to be level, he's Southeast Asian, so probably of Indian descent or parentage in some capacity. So that's that. I watched like I said, I watched 2 other adaptations of the fucking book this week. I watched a television film from 1998, because I looked it up and it was considered one of the more accurate to the text versions of the novel.
Okay.
I mean, keep in mind that Heathcliff is still played by a white man, a Scottish actor named Robert Kavanagh.
They've never actually had a man of color play Heathcliff. Oh,
Yeah,
okay. Sorry,
I think
misconception.
yeah, I discovered that that's actually not true this weekend. I
Okay.
couldn't tell you how many versions, but I can tell you the 1998 TV film stars Robert Kavanagh and Orla Brady as Heathcliff and Catherine, respectively. Also, Matthew McFadden, a number of years before he would go on to play Mr. Darcy in the Keira Knightley Pride and Prejudice. And
Oh,
now
right. Okay.
everybody knows him for like Succession and stuff, and he's a big deal now. But it's funny because he plays the character of Hareton, if I'm not mistaken, in this version of the novel. So that was a pretty decent version. Like I said, it's actually it's pretty true to the story in terms of the exact kind of sequence of events and the narrative structure. So the tenant who lives on Heathcliff's land, Mr. Lockwood, who is the one who the story is told to, and like who finds the journals and things like that and finds out kind of what happened. All of that is stuff that's present in this film version, because it really does follow the structure basically from start to finish. It was decent. It was very TV film, like British TV film to a degree, but it was well done. The performances were quite good. They were kind of what you'd expect them to be, but they were quite good. So yeah, it was a pretty solid version. And then in contrast to that, I watched a newer version, which actually was a theatrical release, I believe, which was released in 2011.
Okay.
This one starred James Howson, a black man, as Heathcliff, and Kaya Scodelario, who's been in like the Maze Runner movies and stuff. That's what I
I know who
recognized
you're
her
talking
from.
about. Yeah, she was in that ice skating show as well there.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's it. And yes, I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah. So she plays Catherine in this version. This one was much darker. This was a very gritty, very stripped down, hardly any even like score throughout the different scenes. Like it's supposed to be a little more realistic and things like that, which I can understand. There's not much fluff to it. I would argue that it winds up being almost too dark and gritty, because unfortunately, as the version that we're going to talk about today also does, it strips away the latter portion of the story in which we're able to watch the next generation of people's children step away from this horrible abusive upbringing and maybe be able to
trauma.
be able to move into a more like a happier kind of like more settled future, so that it also strips that away. It essentially ends the way, in a very similar manner, I should say. I haven't given a spoiler warning yet, so I should say in a similar manner to the way that this Emerald Fennell version does, in the sense that the ending is a lot more abrupt that way, and there aren't like things are not tied up in a neat little bow. So that's kind of what I did. So I would say, like, did it feel like a really realistic version? Yes, they really lean into the racism in this version, because of course they actually have a person of color playing the Heathcliff character. And that part's not a bad thing. Like they do unfortunately like treat the character the way that he would have been treated at this time. But because of kind of everything else that happens, unfortunately, you're just kind of left at the end like, well, that was fucking depressing. Like that's really all you get out of that movie. You're like,
that's what I was thinking as you were speaking. And like, when I went to see this version, I went with my mom. And so I was explaining to her kind of the premise of the novel, because she'd never heard of it. And I did explain that, Heathcliff is, a person of color in the book. But at that point, I didn't realize we'd actually had an adaptation with a person of color. But as I was saying to her, like, it's been like a choice, and there's been a lot of discussion over the yes or no. Do we put, do we cast somebody who's not white? And what I said to my mom is that, these characters, like in their most basic form, are absolutely vile people. And so if you add on the layer of racism that would go with it, it would make for a very, very difficult watch. And so I'm sure that this version that you're talking about, that I've never seen, was very difficult to watch.
I would say it was much more so. Yes, absolutely. I don't But I mean, I don't know. And maybe this is my opinion. I feel like that made more sense because it gave me a better explanation as to
why they're so vile.
Particularly Heathcliff, why. And let me tell you, people, I may as well, you know what? I may as well drop a blanket spoiler warning because we may as well kind of get into this a little bit. So spoilers, be aware of that if you've not watched it yet. Or I guess if you're here and you feel like watching it.
Wait, what's my spoiler noise? Bing bong, bing bong.
Was that what it was last time? I don't remember.
What it was. It was like Wii U.
Yeah, something like that.
Spoilers.
So, to kind of continue on that, I guess that thought process, I would argue that in this version of Wuthering Heights, considering how toned down Heathcliff's character was, having him played by a person who was a person of color probably wouldn't have mattered that much, if I'm honest.
Yeah, it was, you know what, like, and this was like the thing, right? Like going into the movie, I was explaining to my mom how vile these characters are, like to each other, to everybody. And for like a good 50% of the movie, like they were fine. You know, like
I know.
There was nothing wrong with them. It was like this love story on the windy moors of northern England.
Talk about this is the romanticization. These are the things that we talk about that have happened where I'm like, oh, this is like the people who romanticize Romeo and Juliet.
100%, you know.
This is exactly what she did. I'm like, man, Emerald Fennell has an English lit degree.
Well, but
hello?
Then it was like but then okay, at the halfway point, like when he comes back and he's being a dick, and then they're being like, then they kind of start sinking into their madness, kind of. I'm like, yeah, like they are more vile to each other, but I think that it felt like the choice was to romanticize the story and to portray it as a romance love story,
particularly for Heathcliff. Sorry, they really I don't think anybody, if you've not read the book and you don't know like the trajectory that this character takes in the novel, that he is horrible. This awful. Isn't like these aren't like little, like, this isn't the same thing. This is I think what I felt about it mostly when I was watching it. I was like, okay, I think it would have been better if Emerald Fennell had written smutty fan fiction of Wuthering Heights and then been like, I'm turning my book into a movie.
Yeah, because that's kind of what it was. It was like this like smutty romance kind of going on where you're like, where like as a viewer you're like, ooh yeah, Heathcliff, like, you know, devour me, and you're just like, that's not how I'm supposed to be feeling about this person. I'm supposed to loathe him entirely.
Yeah, you're supposed to be like, oh my god, and like, I don't know, I feel like they almost flipped it a little bit. Catherine is kind of shitty, like she's selfish and everything in the novel, but I feel like they really made her like a little shitty little brat in the movie, and I was like, what the fuck is this? And also doing so and doing the bratty thing and having a woman who's clearly in her 30s playing the character played fucking weird on screen. It was so bizarre. I was like, these lines don't suit her at all. She looks way too mature and put together for this.
Yeah, I struggled with that as well. Like, so, like, what I will start by saying is that, like, when I watched the movie, I didn't hate it. Like, I didn't hate it just because, like, if I take it as a standalone movie and I don't focus on, like, the actual source material and the this and the that, like, I enjoyed the sets. I enjoyed the filming of it. It was funny at times.
Look, the costumes were I don't mind that kind of thing. They were very interesting to watch. The music was cool. I really liked all the Charli XCX stuff. I liked it. I don't mind that. Like, we've talked about that when we've talked about Bridgerton stuff, right? That the costumes aren't super period accurate.
No.
The music is all more modernized stuff, and that part I don't think takes anything away from it.
Yeah,
I think it's more just like the story itself and what we've done with the characterizations of the people on screen.
Well, yeah, and like I kept looking at Margot Robbie and I was like, I feel like I'm like watching Margot Robbie. You know what I mean? Like it was like I'm just kind of watching, and like she was good, don't get me wrong, but like I keep forgetting to look up the age difference between Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi.
She is currently, I'm going to tell you right now, Margot Robbie is 35 at the moment and Jacob Elordi is 28. So like a 7-year
so
gap. Yeah.
so there's a 7-year age gap between the two of them, which is not like huge, like it's
No.
not whatever, but it just kind of, I think because we've seen Margot Robbie play like so many different characters throughout the years,
Like an
and like
adult, not
an
not
adult,
like a child. Yeah, I know.
and
I
like
know.
and her like whininess in this movie was just not really working for me. And like
It
that's the
didn't.
thing that's
Yeah.
been bugging me. Like I watched this on Friday and it kind of just keeps bugging
It's
me as I
stuck in your
think
brain, eh? And you're just
it's
like,
like
I
stuck. And it like when I think about like because again I went to see this with my mom who like loves a period piece. Holy shit, does this
I'm
woman fucking
surprised your mom
love.
has never seen a version of Wuthering Heights
She's never
before.
seen it. She didn't know what this was, but the
Really?
actor
Wow.
who played Kathy's dad,
Yes.
whatever his name.
I believe his name is Martin Clunes.
Yes, that's right. So as soon as like, in the opening scene where like the names are coming up, like who,
Yes.
my
Yes.
mom immediately was like, "Oh, Martin Clunes is in this." And I'm like, "Oh,
Who?
like who's that?" And she's like, "Oh, he's in a ton of like period dramas."
Okay, yeah.
And it felt like I was watching two separate movies,
Mhm. Mhm.
between like Martin Clunes and
Yeah.
like The Servants and like what's his name who's in House of the Dragon and stuff
Yes,
like
Joseph there,
yeah.
yeah.
So like all these characters who are playing like one side of things at Wuthering Heights,
Yes.
and then there's like Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi playing like
Their
a
own
Hollywood version over
separate.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's true. Everybody else who felt like they were very much fitting into the setting and
Yes.
particularly this particular design of Wuthering Heights as a place because it's the mansion that they live in, like it's the house that they have.
It reminded me of the House of the Seven Gables, the way that they built it.
Yeah, kind of, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I definitely get why you would find
Yeah.
it that way. So that kind of like setting and stuff like that, you're right. It's almost like everyone else, all of the people who were servants and stuff who fit into that a little bit better, like Joseph, Nelly. I want to talk about Hong Chau because I think she gave one of the
Oh,
best performances in the
I
movie. She was fucking
I
fantastic.
want to talk about Nelly for a long time because
Yes.
there's so much to unpack with Nelly. If
Yeah.
it hadn't been for Nelly, I think Nelly made this movie personally.
I agree. I
And
thought she was phenomenal.
she
She was
yeah,
so restrained with
yes.
everything that she was doing, but you could see exactly what she was upset about, exactly what she was doing the whole time,
Yep.
why she was jealous, what her motivations were,
Yep.
how she got there, but
Yep.
how she did it in such a quiet, calculated way because she
Evil
is
way.
stuck in this particular she was incredible. I thought she
She was
was
incredible.
so good.
But before we get to Nelly, because there's so much to unpack with Nelly,
Yes.
I just want to give a shout out to the two child actors who are like
Oh,
teens who
yes.
played the
Yeah, the younger
kids.
ones there, yeah.
The one who was in Adolescence who played the boy
Oh my
there.
God, thank you. Fuck. I was like, who is that? Who is that? Who is
Yeah,
that?
he
Who
was
is
in
that? Who is that?
Adolescence. He was awesome. He was so cute. Like
He
they
was so
played
good.
such a great I love that part of the movie. I can't remember how accurate it is to how they are when they are children together, but like
Um,
I just enjoyed that dynamic.
Overall, it was. I would say, yeah, it was pretty good. And I mean, at least it made sense then when the younger version of Catherine is like annoying and bratty. I was like, yeah, of course she is. She's like 12.
Well, yeah, like that made sense, but then when it like immediately flipped over to Margot Robbie behaving the same way, I'm like, "Ugh."
Oh, you took me out of it now. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't suspend my disbelief this much, guys.
And
Like,
it's oh man, maybe it's starting to prove to us that we need more unknowns being cast
yeah,
and stuff because in these particularly maybe in more iconic characters because you're not remembering them from anything else. People who have
correct.
had like maybe smaller careers so far might not be a bad option sometimes.
No, because this could have been a launching point for somebody, right?
Correct. Oh God, definitely.
Yeah.
So I think for me, what the thing that first like took me out of it, so I was like, well, it does look beautiful.
Yep.
Nobody's surprised. Nobody is surprised about that. The
Yep.
cinematographer for this movie, his name is Linus Sandgren. He's a Swedish cinematographer.
Well,
I
he
want
did
to
a
just
fantastic fucking job.
he did absolutely. So he was the cinematographer for La La Land.
Oh yeah.
He was the cinematographer for No Time to Die, so a James Bond film.
Hmm.
Don't Look Up,
Oh yeah.
and also for Saltburn prior to this. So of
Yeah.
course he knows what he's doing. Like it looked beautiful. The film looked fantastic. I think personally, I think that might be maybe one of my bigger things is that I think that Emerald Fennell has a brilliant mind for visuals and aesthetics, but when
Yes.
she tries to bring home a message about something, it doesn't really land. And I felt this way about both of her other films that I've seen.
So I'm conflicted because I've heard a lot of negative feedback about like Saltburn and Promising Young Woman. These are her two other films.
Yeah.
Oh, side note, sorry, I have to slide this in here.
Yeah.
Emerald Fennell is actually also an actor.
Yeah, she is.
In Call the Midwife, and side note, my mom has watched all of Call the Midwife, so she was regaling me with all the tales of Emerald Fennell and Call the Midwife, and like all the episodes she was in.
She also played Camilla Parker Bowles in The Crown on Netflix.
Crown.
That's where I'd seen her
with that as well.
That's where I'd seen her previously, was in The Crown. So.
Anyway, sorry, I had to wedge that in there because it was really funny.
You're so funny. It's funny.
She just kept going on and on about this. I'm like, okay, Mom.
You're like, yes, Mom.
Yes, Mom. But yeah, there's been a lot of like negativity about Saltburn and A Promising Young Woman, and I like both of them. I thought that they, like, yes, they're weird. Like, she's got like kind of like some weird, aesthetic things that she brings to her movies, and like the characters are all really fucked all the time, But if you take them for what they are, just like movies to entertain you, and you're not looking for like something that's going to create a social movement, which is what I think she's aiming for a lot of the time.
But I think that's the problem.
But you can. So here's the other thing, and I don't know anything about Emerald Fennell, so I could be very wrong about this, but I get the feeling that she might be from maybe a wealthier family.
Oh, yes, ma'am. So Emerald Fennell was born in London. Her father's name is Theo Fennell, and he is a very, very bougie jewelry designer.
Okay, so that's why I'm like, this looks, so she strikes me, the eye that I'm getting is somebody who was born with a lot of money, a lot of wealth, a lot of privilege, but who also has a bit of a conscience, and so she's trying to do something with her, like, with her work. It's not quite hitting the mark.
Well, I think the problem is that as somebody who's grown up as posh as she has, and honestly, if you see her interviewed, you can see it immediately. Yeah. First of all, I will say, I will give her she's got one of those like great fucking raspy voices. I've always wanted to sound like I smoke even though I don't, kind of thing. And I never will, because I sound like the mom from Back to the Future, but I always have wanted I've always wanted to sound like she does. So every time I hear her interviewed, she has a really calm voice, and I'm always like, oh, she sounds so nice to listen to. I'm telling you, everything's aesthetics. It's incredible. It's like her entire persona is like but when I feel like maybe exactly what you're mentioning, right, is that she's from a very wealthy family, and I feel like what's happened is that as she's, sort of endeavored towards these like sort of like creative projects like films and things like that, what she's become interested in is kind of a study to a degree and potentially trying to make a commentary about classism, but she doesn't really make a commentary about it with what she's doing. Like, she never really says anything about it. She just puts it there, and you're like, right. So where were we going with this? I don't know.
And I think the whole point is, but I think the whole point is that, like, if you put yourself in her shoes, where can she go with it? Because all she can really do is be like, I'm aware that, like, there's like a disgusting amount of wealth over here.
Yeah.
And there's not a disgusting amount of wealth over here. And I understand that on this side, that would be really, really difficult. And people probably want what's over here, but I don't really know how to get that message out on the, like, I'm not going further with it because I'm not sure how.
Yeah. I can't
because
quite bring
she's
it
always
home.
lived in the wealth bubble.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, I can never not hear you now going, Marty.
That's what I sound
Marty.
Like. It's worse right now too, because I'm still congested because I'm recovering from a cold. So it's just like we've kicked it up like 12 notches. Anyway, yeah. So I think for me, what the first thing that made me be like, oh no, about this was that everything was starting, and I was like, yeah, it looks good. Hey, the kids are not bad. We'll kind of see where things go. And I'm so glad that you remembered that it was Owen Cooper from Adolescence, who, by the way, God, if you haven't watched that show.
Oh, it's fantastic.
It's so hard to watch, but it's incredible. Between Owen Cooper and Stephen Graham in that show, I was like, I have to go. Bye. Yeah. That's it. That's all we're ever getting. We're never getting anything better from them. Anyway, when it started, I was kind of like, all right, okay, let's kind of see how this goes. And then I realized about 5 or 6 minutes in, I was like, holy fucking hell, there's an entire character missing. A pivotal character is missing, and it is Kathy's brother Hindley who causes most of the fucking problems in the first place. Because so the way that everything works in the novel is that Mr. Earnshaw returns from a trip away, like a work trip or something like that. He does bring Heathcliff back with him. Now, it's a lot less romanticized. He's more just kind of like, yeah, I felt bad for this kid, whatever, I took him in, blah. There's some theorizing as to whether or not people are like, that's weird. Was he like an illegitimate child of Mr. Earnshaw's or something? Maybe. We don't know.
It's never explained, though. He just kind of brings him home one day, and that's it.
He brings him home. This is going to be your new brother. And it's Mr. Earnshaw who says, we'll name him Heathcliff after another child of theirs who passed away.
Right.
So he does do that. However, Mr. Earnshaw does favor Heathcliff over Hindley, who is Kathy's brother, who lives with them at Wuthering Heights. He's a little older than her. And Hindley is a fucking monster to Heathcliff because of it. He treats him deplorably. He has him beaten by Joseph, who, by the way, sucks in the book. He's so toned down in this. And I was weird because I was like, why would you cast Ewan Mitchell, who we know plays a really good villain in House of the Dragon, and not get him to be an asshole?
And they towed the line of trying to show him as a villain in that like sex scene with him and the other.
Yeah, but I'm like, they're into BDSM, so
I know, but I'm like, okay, like either you're in or you're out of him being a villain. Like, don't do the hokey pokey with it. Like, give the people what they want.
I agree. And they didn't do it. And it was really, that was a weird choice. I was like, but he's so good at it. You could have just
such a good villain. Like, you really hate him in, I feel like, in House of Dragon.
Yeah, he's what, Aemond, I think, Targaryen? He's great.
Yeah.
I think it's Aemond. I don't remember.
It's
whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, whatever. He's great. And I'm like, oh, you could have just, whatever, fuck it. It doesn't matter. Anyway,
but I'm just. It took me a minute to figure out who he was, because I was like,
you're like, who's that?
I know this guy, but normally I hate him. Who is he? You know?
and then you went, oh, long white hair.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, oh shit, yeah.
Eye patch. Anyway, so like you have like all of that stuff that happens in the book, and it's Hindley who does all of this. And then at some point, Mr. Earnshaw, because he sees like what's happening, and he sees that Hindley is like horribly abusive to Heathcliff. And like I said, he has this weird thing where he favors Heathcliff over his son, which is a little bit weird. He sends Hindley off to college. And in the interim with all of this, Mr. Earnshaw dies. Like, he does not die like all the way at the end. He passes away at some point earlier than that. And after that happens, of course, because Hindley is the oldest and a boy. He comes back to Wuthering Heights with his wife, Frances. And he's like, oh, I'm here now. And he basically, to Heathcliff, is like, you can basically act as a fucking servant, or you can get out of here. And that's it. And he treats him horribly. It's like deplorable the way that he acts with him, and Catherine is miserable over all of it, obviously, because she, her and Heathcliff have gotten so close. They're basically like, we're each other's like soulmates. We're like obsessed with each other. That's the way that they act with one another. So that whole dynamic creates a totally different vibe. And it also adds to why Heathcliff is so hard and so angry all of the time as a person, because every day of his existence, it's like he was probably treated horribly before he was adopted. And then after he arrives at Wuthering Heights, he maybe gets vague reprieves here and there, even though he's still like treated as lesser than overall. Like, Mr. Earnshaw basically is like, yeah, whatever, this is like a little friend for you, la-di-da, sure. And because of that, he, becomes resentful of them in general, but he's in love with Catherine, so he kind of like lets that part go. But he becomes resentful of like Hindley and things like that, and the mistreatment that he receives because of that. And then when Hindley returns and everything kicks up 10 notches, he becomes so angry about everything all the time, and he's being forcefully basically kept away from Catherine and cannot spend time with her, because they think that he's made her wild and uncultured and they need to fix her, basically, because of all this.
And like, as I was watching the movie, like the whole sequence of like, from when they're children, then they flip over to like Jacob Elordi being Heathcliff, and he's like he's all like disheveled and is this thing on? He's all like disheveled and grisly or whatever. But he's still got this like,
he still looks like fucking Jacob Elordi. Come on.
It's not even just that. Like, you can see in his face, he's just got this like general contentment of like, oh, I get to work with the animals and be outside and like,
does not
whatever.
feel that way in
and
the
I'm
book.
just like, I'm like watching this and I'm like, what the fuck, man? Like, you're supposed to like be so angry that you're like ready to kill everybody, you know?
Where he like has these outbursts and stuff and he feels violent and dangerous. And that's like part of the point of the character. And it's crazy to me that I'm like, but you cast a white man. You could have just had him do that if you were like, if there was any concern about any kind of racial profiling going on, well, you wouldn't have fucking had it.
You wouldn't have had to deal with the backlash. Instead, he had this like, he was calm and demure.
I know. What? Hello? No.
Yeah.
It didn't make any sense, and it didn't. The character.
You know what
didn't
I
play
felt
well.
like actually a couple of times when I was watching it, because Frankenstein came out like not long ago. I was
like,
oh, he's playing Frankenstein.
Hello, like he's still playing the monster at this point.
That's
but
what he felt like.
I'm supposed to feel sympathy for the monster. I don't know. Everybody's gonna be like, Frankenstein also wasn't an accurate adaptation. Don't care. It was, for me, it was better done. I liked it better. I don't care. I did not like this. I couldn't get behind the way that they went about doing this. It looks beautiful. It's like very interesting to watch. The music is really cool. But turning everything into like an epic romance instead of actually attempting to say anything about generational trauma in any capacity was just kind of disappointing at this point to do, because I'm like, okay, I mean, we could have just made a fucking music video about it then, couldn't we?
I mean, put it this way, if it was going to come up for awards season, I would put it up for like cinematography, costumes, set design, but I wouldn't go any further than that, probably.
No.
Did I fully enjoy watching this movie? I did. I enjoyed this movie quite a bit, but I had to take myself out of what the actual story is to enjoy it, you know?
I want to, because again, and I knew this is like because of how, like, what point we were at in the story and how long I'd been sitting in the movie theater. I knew that we were going to do the same thing again. Because in this version, like, okay, so again, per the book, after Heathcliff comes, after he's like taken off for a number of years, like 5 years roughly, he comes back to Wuthering Heights. He buys it from Hindley, technically not from the dad, from Hindley, who his wife died in childbirth. And so he fell into a deep depression and a bunch of alcoholism. And he can't upkeep the place anymore. So Heathcliff takes off for about 5 years after he does overhear Catherine talking to Nelly about the fact that it would degrade her to marry him because they're not of the same station, the way people treat him, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of that stuff, that does happen. And he leaves in anger. And he comes back 5 years later, and we never know how he's made any money. I assume something illegal. I have no idea. But he's done something to someone. He leaves. And the thing that sucks, I find, that could have been so good is like in these other two versions of this that I watched, especially, I will say the 1998 one, you can really see it the way that they did it, like the TV movie. When Heathcliff returns, every single decision that he makes from that point on is calculated to take everything away from everybody else because of how he was treated. And he's like, I'm going to get all of this and I'm going to be the one in charge of everything. And it's what he does. He comes back, he purchases Wuthering Heights because Hindley cannot upkeep it, and then just lets him live there. But he's like, I don't fucking care, do what you want. And basically kind of pushes him towards the alcoholism a little bit more. So he does that in a calculated way. He comes back into Catherine's life to taunt her when she's married to Edgar, who I feel bad for in almost every version, because he really loves her. And I'm like, and it must suck that your wife doesn't love you anyway.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it is sad. It's sad in all the versions.
It was Edgar was an interesting casting choice I found for this movie, because I was like, oh, so you did choose
all of the other than characters.
The other than, but also the actor himself, like, not to take away from him, but he had all these like small features, which I thought was a really interesting contrast to Jacob Elordi, because he's got like all these tiny little features, like a little mouth and a little nose, you know.
Maybe that was part of the reason that they did it. I have no idea. I don't know. He's played by an actor, a British actor named Shazad Latif, who I think has done like a lot of stuff. He did Penny Dreadful. He's in like the Nautilus TV show, which is he plays Captain Nemo and like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and stuff like that. He's done like a bunch of different stuff. So I recognized him and I was like, oh yeah, who's that? So I looked it up after. But anyway, I always feel bad for this character because he's so besotted with Kathy the entire time,
Yeah.
basically, the poor man. And he's, of course, jealous when Heathcliff comes back because he
Of
can see
course.
that there's something, you know, between the two of them. And he's
A
like, what the
big
fuck is going on?
hulking brute coming back.
Yeah. And he's like, you know, she clearly has affection for him. And of course, he's jealous and stuff, which is
Of
kind
course.
of normal.
Yeah.
But what ends up happening is that Catherine does get pregnant, and in the book, she gives birth to a daughter who's also
I
named
thought so
Kathy.
too.
Yes,
Yeah.
who she also names Catherine. So she does give birth to a daughter, and
That's
then
right. Yeah,
it's after. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it. Yeah, so she gives birth to a daughter, and then later on, again in a calculated move, whatchamacallit, Heathcliff does like quote unquote become interested in Isabella, who in the novel is she's Edgar's sister, not his ward.
Mm.
And the thing too that's like, you know, in the book, that's like a whole thing about it, right, is that Edgar and Isabella in the book are described as blonde haired and blue. They look like Margot Robbie.
Yes.
They're blonde haired, blue eyed, pale skin. And on Kathy's side of things, when she meets Edgar, she's fascinated by the way that he looks because it's so different than what she's grown up with, because she's grown up with Heathcliff.
Right.
And on Heathcliff's side, he specifically, which is why it's so funny that Margot Robbie plays Catherine's character, he specifically says that he hates Isabella's blonde hair and like pale skin. He fucking hates it. He doesn't like it. And you're like,
because it's such a difference from him. It's like the polar opposite.
It's the difference from him, and it doesn't look like Catherine. Catherine has dark hair on the book.
She's got dark hair. Yeah, that I remembered. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Because they're up in West Yorkshire is where the novel is set. So, so anyway, so he does, in a calculated move, basically kind of trick Isabella into marrying him. Basically, like she becomes like quite besotted with him after he comes back, and he's all like cultured seeming and stuff, even though it's kind of a ruse. But he does things like she does. She's young and naive and in love and ignores red flags. Not like there's no like straight up fucking conversation like you see in this movie version where it's like, I'm gonna be horrible to you. Are you okay with that? There's not.
That was weird.
That was such a bad scene. I hated it.
I know. I was like, so are we like because we're like the consent culture now? So are we getting consent for doing this? Like, I'm like, this is weird. It's really weird.
And it's stupid because they do that and then they retcon it by being like, oh, but she's into it, so it doesn't matter. What?
Yeah, like when he's got her chained up at the end and Nelly's like, do you want to come home, Isabella? And she's like, but Nelly, I am home. And she like winks at her. I'm like, what the fuck am I watching?
It's so stupid. It's so dumb. I dated it. And this is the thing too, again, another like amount of the theme that could have been explored is that they get married, and then immediately afterwards, Heathcliff starts abusing Isabella.
Yes.
He beats her. He berates her. He is atrocious to her. And there's one specific scene that I saw in both other versions that I was like, okay, see, they are reminding you in these versions how terrible he is. There's a time that he and Isabella are leaving together to go on a walk. And she basically watches him do this. And she, again, because she's young and naive and has no life experience, she ignores the red flag anyway. He takes her dog and strings it up by its leash to leave it there to hang. And I think Nelly finds the dog. I don't think it's dead, but Nelly finds the dog and she's like, what the fuck? And that is part of the story. And it's supposed to demonstrate Heathcliff's, basically, this is his warning of cruelty. Like, this is what's coming for you. And that's what Isabella chooses to ignore.
Yeah, and
relationship.
I think that they did kind of slide it in a much less shocking manner, like because the dog's been left locked in the room all night or longer, because who knows how long it took the servants to realize that Isabella was gone.
I mean, I'm assuming it would be the next day because they'd be coming in to wake her up and dress her and stuff. So
that's what I thought too. But like, there was like a lot of like, business done on the carpet by the dog.
Yeah, I don't know about
in that scene. But anyway, yeah, I think that was their way of inserting that scene in a lot. Like,
I guess, yeah, I was like, oh yes, they just left the dog in the bedroom. Okay. It was very different because I had actually completely forgotten that that's something that he does in the book.
Horrible.
Until I was watching like the first version of it that I watched. I was like, oh God, fuck, what the fuck? And then I was like, oh God, right, yeah. And it's just from there it escalates from violence towards animals to towards his wife, obviously. So all of that happens. And then again, what this movie does that, like I said, the second adaptation of it does that I watched, it ends essentially immediately after Catherine's death at the end of the film. Now, obviously, these are for two different reasons in the novel as well as in the 2011 film. Edgar is he basically loses it, and he's like, you need to fucking pick between the two of us, because I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do this thing anymore that we're doing of this back and forth. I'm not going to live my life like this. And Catherine, I don't know, I think she's supposed to have some sort of borderline personality disorder. She goes into kind of a madness. She refuses to eat or drink. She winds up becoming ill, and that is how she dies. There's no like sepsis or anything that occurs because she doesn't miscarry the baby. She's already had the baby. And so she does. And then before she dies, Heathcliff comes to see her, and she's like, I need you to forgive me for how I've treated you. And he doesn't. He's like, no, how can I? How can I? And you're like, are you serious? She's dying.
Yeah, but it's because they're both vile. Like, I know. And I think like in the book, if I recall, when I read it and we did an analysis of it, it was like Catherine asking him to forgive her, and he won't. And I think because she basically put herself in this situation that she's dying, like it's like she's dying by choice. Like I think that's how he saw it.
I believe so. Yeah, I believe he thinks she's done it to herself, basically.
Yeah, and so he's like, no, I will not forgive you. Because like also like, what the fuck are you doing, kind of thing. You know?
Literally, literally. Yeah. So that happens, and then as we see in this version, she passes away, and he's miserable, of course. And it's so abrupt in this movie. You're like, really? That's how we're ending it? Okay. And same thing I will say in the 2011 version. It's just later on, Heathcliff he's just like walking on the moors, sort of like despondent, essentially, and stuff. And again, that's how that one ends. And I'm like, oh God, I hate the endings like this, because it doesn't give you the whole kind of second portion of things, which is part of the reason that, again, in novels of this time period, very often it wouldn't have been like a first person perspective. So that's why the character of Mr. Lockwood, the tenant, exists, because most of the time it's stories at this time, right? It was something being recounted to someone, like, oh, this person told me the story about what happened here because I found a letter, or they recounted to me the story of what happened in this area, or blah, 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 whatever. That was often the narrative structure that was used at that time. So that is what's used. It's a combination of journals, like a journal and things like that he finds, I believe, of Catherine's, and Nelly, who also recounts a portion of the story. And, that's cool too, because she can be considered like an unreliable narrator to a degree. So that's like a thing, because it's like her perspective on the matter. But
fun fact as to why they used to do this in classic literature is because the first novel actually only came out in, I want to say, like 18 something. Because before that, to write fiction was considered a sin because it's lying.
Because it was lying.
Because it's lying. And so if you were to put it in a first person point of view perspective, it would be a total lie.
Right.
And I think, like, even though by the time Wuthering Heights came out, like, they'd kind of moved on from this type of mindset, it was still ingrained, I think, in society that, you kind of need, like, it can't be a first person point of view because it's a lie, it's a sin,
Yeah, that would make sense, honestly. That's probably why they did that. That's so weird. Anyway, so after this has happened, like I said, technically Kathy's had a daughter also named Catherine, and Hindley and his wife, who died in childbirth, had a son named Hareton. After Catherine dies and Heathcliff goes into a deep depression in Wuthering Heights, Hareton, he goes to get Hareton, like take him away, because Edgar wants to take him to protect him. But Heathcliff is like, nah, everything that comes with Wuthering Heights comes to me, bitch. So he takes Hareton, treats him horribly, makes him work the way that his father Hindley made Heathcliff work. Like that's what he's doing. Everything is a revenge plot for him. So he does this. A number of years later, first of all, Isabel is able to get away from him. She leaves, and she does die a number of years later, if I'm not mistaken. And Edgar also passes away. And when he does, Heathcliff also purchases Thrushcrest Grange, which is the other house that the Linton family has been living in and where Catherine lived in up to her death. And along with that, he basically takes Kathy, like the younger one, in as his ward, sort of. And so now he's got all of this land. So basically the whole thing, right, is that he's gotten what he's wanted forever, but it's not enough because the love of his life is dead and he's miserable and he's never forgiven her and he's never done this and that. So what's able to happen is that through like part of the narrative is kind of like different, I guess, depending on like what you see. But basically, he's able to eventually get to a point where he learns that he has to forgive her, and then in turn kind of forgive himself for a lot of things, which he does wind up doing because he's basically been searching for her ghost this entire time, and he's upset that she won't come and see him. So he does wind up getting to a point where he's able to be like, I forgive you. This is like wrong. I forgive you. I need to like move on and things like that. And so then he dies, but he dies happier because he was able to move away from that trauma and from everything that he experienced and all of the hate and all of the anger that he'd been carrying for pretty much his entire life. So he dies. And in the meantime, my understanding is that Hareton and Kathy, young Kathy, have kind of fallen in love with each other. And they tell Mr. Lockwood that they're planning to move away, to go and leave and be able to move into a new life. And so this is kind of the version of everything coming full circle, but also perhaps breaking the curse of that generational trauma and allowing this new generation to move forward in a more positive, happier way without all of this anger following them everywhere.
Isn't it interesting that like so I always loved Wuthering Heights as a classic novel more than other classic novels, especially ones written by women, because a lot of the time at that time women were not empowered to write novels, and you know, they weren't. And if they did, then it was all about like high society and meeting a husband and yada yada. But there are some novels like Wuthering Heights, like the ones written by George Eliot, also known as Marianne Evans. She wrote like Adam Bede. Thomas Hardy as well had some really fantastic novels where they explore the human psyche and emotions and how these can come into play in our day-to-day behaviors, how that can manifest. And then, as we see in this one, how it then lends to the future generations and then what that means.
They were so ahead of their time, the women who were doing this.
That's what I'm saying, is like, it's so interesting to me because you take a novel that was written in, what did you say,
1847 it was published.
1847. And we're making a modern day adaptation in 2026 that is nowhere near as full of depth and you know, deep, I guess, I don't know other words, as the original novel that this was that it's based on. And I'm like, I struggle with this so much because I'm like, you cannot tell me that in 2026 we are not able to actually analyze this and come out with like the adaptation that provides this on a silver platter for
but unfortunately, I think, you know, based on everything we've seen up until this point about the film and like the making of and all that stuff and everything Emerald Fennell said, and even things that you were talking about earlier, this wasn't about making an adaptation. This was about making her romanticized version when she was like 13 and she read this book and she just decided that this is what it was. This is what it looked like. This is who it who should look this particular way in this novel. She put herself in it. I'm sorry, she put herself in it. She's also a blonde, posh British woman. So she cast a beautiful blonde woman as the lead in her film.
And, you know, it's funny because at the beginning of our episode, you actually made a parallel to, oh, this is how people perceive Romeo and Juliet, and they completely missed the point. Do you remember Isabella talking about Romeo and Juliet in this movie?
I started laughing a bit in the theater because I had thought it, because I was like, I get the feeling this is going to be one of those like things where we take like kind of a toxic romance of sorts between characters and we make it into this like with this Romeo and Juliet, how lovely, even though it's tragic and horrible and sad. And then she's sitting there telling, and her first words are about how excited she is and how much she loves Romeo and Juliet. Now, I will say that was clever writing, because then all of the things that she does to ignore everything later make total sense. So that was good. Like, that was clever. And I thought Alison Oliver, did a really good job.
Oh my gosh, she did a fantastic job as Isabella, like with the writing that she was given for that character. But I wonder, because you said Emerald Fennell has like an English degree and stuff, I'm like, well, was that all done? Is this all done like tongue in cheek? Like, is she kind of saying like, you know, this is how people see Romeo and Juliet. This is how people see Wuthering Heights. Like, it's a romance.
Maybe,
you know?
But if she's not saying it.
No, but I go back to, I feel like with her in all of her movies, she's trying to give you something, but she can't quite get there.
Stick the landing. We're not sticking the landing.
We're not sticking the landing.
no, because it's like, we're going to talk about something. And I'm like, okay. And then it was in this, she's, I will say she's like a master of dodging questions though, because she's been asked a few times about not casting a person of color as Heathcliff. And she answers in the most roundabout way possible without saying a word. She really doesn't answer the question.
That's her posh upbringing. She's been,
it's
like,
very
honestly,
PR.
No, but honestly, like, I don't know about you, but every time I've met somebody who grew up like in a wealthy family, like surrounded by like this type of like society, I find they're really hard to get like an answer out of a lot of the time because they've been taught to just kind of say things
give
and
a PR response to
exactly,
every
and just kind of skirt around the actual issue, you
very
know?
much. Oh, it was
That's
it was
kind of what this movie
weird.
does.
I watched it a couple of times, like 2 different times in interviews, and I was like, she's not really saying a fucking word about it other than this was my interpretation. We're like, so your interpretation, in spite of the fact that he's physically described as a brown man, is that
It was
he's
Jacob
white.
Elordi.
You're like, Miss Ma'am, that does not make sense. And you know, it is too bad because honestly, especially like I said, this version of Heathcliff, who's like a very kind of toned down, romanticized, just sort of smarmy version of Heathcliff more than anything else.
He was, yes.
Because of that, I'm like, man, you could have done it and it would have been fine. But if you wanted to step up a little bit and do a little bit more and focus more on maybe like the racially charged aspects of the book, there are a couple of people, like I've seen 2 or 3 people say this, and I was like, people are like, Dev Patel was right there.
Oh, he would have been wonderful.
Fantastic. And also, I'm sorry, he's handsome. I think he's very good looking. Yeah. He's handsome. He's well spoken. So he would do both versions extremely well of Heathcliff. And he can vacillate between calm and angry.
Yep.
He's fantastically talented. He's good looking. He's charismatic. It would have been good. It would have been good anyway.
Like it would have completely shifted the movie just by putting that actor in. And
100%.
And it would have taken her closer to sticking the landing.
I think so. Maybe you would have been able to do more with the script for it to say a little more. But I
don't even think she would have had to. I think it would have kind of.
I don't know, but they did lose me during the whole like latter third of the like little romance montage of them having sex everywhere. I was okay, but none of that happens in the book, which no one's surprised to hear. Obviously,
well, no, I mean, because they never actually end up together in the book. But but the thing that kept throwing me off in the movie was the goddamn room that she has, where it's
her skin room
of her skin with her mole on her face. I'm like, what is going
on? I don't know. It's weird.
It was weird. But I want to spend some time talking about Nelly.
Yes, let's do that before we wrap it up. It's true.
Yeah. So, Nelly was the character with the most depth in this movie. Yes. And to your point, she did it without saying too much. It was weird. Okay, so what I will say is that when I was watching the movie, we went to a late showing and we were the only ones in the movie theater. So we could be jerks and talk throughout the whole thing if we wanted to. And so like, I really loved how they were showing who Nelly is. So in the opening scene, Catherine and Nelly are together. They're running through the moors. They've been to the hanging, which, side note, was, in my opinion, a hilarious opening scene. The hanging.
Oh, they were really, but again,
and then they're running through.
It's shock factor, man. It's Emerald Fennell and her shock factor. She's just like, how can I make this shocking from the first?
Oh yeah, it was shock factor
from the beginning, and you're like, yeah, okay,
for sure. I was like, yeah, okay. I thought it was pretty funny though, the way that they did it. And then so you see Nelly and Catherine, and they're like besties, and like even though Catherine's like a pain in the ass, like Nelly loves her. You can see that there's love for her on her face, you know. And then as soon as Heathcliff enters the scene, you can see Nelly like realize that she's no longer going to be Catherine's only person who's there, who's her age, who can like kind of, you know, be her friend essentially, you know, even though that's not her, that's not who she's supposed to be. Like, she's a companion.
It's who she has been.
it's
this
who she
whole
has
time.
been.
Yeah.
And so immediately you see this sadness take over
And the
her.
jealousy that
And
ensues,
then
all
the
of that stuff.
jealousy
Yeah.
that comes from it, and then the other, the housekeeper saying to her, like, haha, like, I guess you're not the favorite anymore. And she knocks over that cup, like, in such a
Yeah.
cruel way, and I'm like, ooh, wow.
Wow. But I mean, from both ends too, because you're just like, all right, don't be a bitch,
Yeah, well, I'm
Scylla, or
like, wow,
whatever,
you're being a
whichever one.
huge bitch. But then
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay, all right.
Yeah. So, but it was just, I don't know what it was. It was also, I mean, also, I think maybe I have some feelings too, because I'm like, okay, so we won't cast Heathcliff as person of color, but the servant can be
Yeah, I
an
didn't
Asian
love
woman.
that,
I was like,
especially
okay,
since I don't think Nelly was described in
well, she's
any.
white.
She's white in the
Yeah.
book,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I'm like, okay, interesting.
And
Yeah,
I think that's the whole
choice.
point, is that Heathcliff is the only person of color in the novel. Like, no one else
Yeah,
is, of color in any capacity. Everybody else is just white. So
yeah. Well, this
why
is it.
he's treated so poorly. Again, it's another
Well,
reason that he's treated so
because it would
poorly,
have
because
been
he's
very
different.
shocking at the time, wouldn't it?
Very much.
Right? And so then you see the progression of Nelly, and then as she's kind of. I was like watching her performance, and I wasn't sure where they were gonna go with it with
Hmm.
Nelly. And so it's like when Catherine is gone and she's sprained her ankle, which was like a very funny scene. I thought,
It
her
was kind of funny, yeah.
her
But
peeking over the thing and she fell. I was like,
but again, I found that's why Isabella was funny. Like,
she was.
she made moments of levity to a degree with
She
some
did.
things. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, Catherine's gone for 6 weeks and she comes back and she gets out of the carriage and Nelly is just in awe. You see it on her face. She's like, you are transformed.
Yeah.
Like, wow. Like, and I, now that I've seen the whole movie, now that I've kind of refreshed my memory a little bit about Nelly in the book, I'm like, she was already, like, the wheels were already turning. Like,
How can we get out of this shit
how
situation
can we
that
get
we're
out of the
in?
hovel so that I can also have pretty dresses like you
Yes.
have right now,
Yes.
And
Oh,
so it's like you can
100%.
almost see the cogs start going like
Oh, yeah. As soon as she saw it and she realized what was going on and how quickly this was going to progress, because
yeah,
how much Edgar had immediately basically become infatuated with
yeah,
Catherine, she was like, okay,
yeah,
what can I get out of this now? Because
yeah,
she's just like, I've been cast to the side this entire time while Kathy and Heathcliff have had their fun little cutesy pseudo romance situation
mm,
going on. Now I'm gonna get what I fucking want.
yeah. She's
So
like,
get
oh,
me
it's
out of
Nellie's
here.
time,
Yeah, it's my turn.
and then you can just see like the resolve kind of solidify on her face at that point. Like, this actress did a
Oh,
fantastic
she's so
job.
good. Yeah, her name
She
is
was
Hong
so
Chau. She's very, very good.
so good. And then that scene where where she's having that closed door conversation with Catherine and she sees Heathcliff outside and she
Yes.
knows he's going to be listening,
Mhm.
and she kind of she engineers the conversation to go in a certain way so that he can hear it. When Kathy turns around and says to Nelly something along the lines of like, how would you know? You've never loved anyone and no one's ever loved you in your life. There's a look that crosses Nelly's face, and it's like this is the moment where Nelly goes from she could have been good and a good friend to fully
Forget it.
evil,
This is for me
because
now.
because like because when she says to her, you've never loved anyone in your life, it flashes across her face and I could see it. It was like, but I loved you,
She's like, "Well, I
Catherine.
loved you, but
I
now, you know
loved
what?
you.
I think I'm done with this now."
And I think
So,
I'm done with this shit now. So
yeah,
you know what? Fuck you. I'm
yeah,
gonna go get some pretty dresses. You
correct.
know? Yeah.
I'm gonna go live in a better place. I'm gonna go get things like gifts and actually be able to sleep in a warm
Eat
bed for a change.
and eat good food and
Yeah.
not have these bitchy, housekeepers and
Yeah, and
servants,
this, like, rip-roaring drunk over here coming in and
Yeah,
out at all
pissing
hours
up
of
the
the night.
wall every other day, like,
Absolutely not. No, thank you. So,
yeah,
no, it's true. It gives a lot of credence to it, and it's just so crazy that, like, this is the character who really had the most depth, who had the most
yes.
going on. But it's weird because it was so brilliant, but at the same time, it's almost like the movie's trying to distract you to be like, but look at these two beautiful people over here, and I'm like, well, I don't care now.
But that's what I'm saying, like, it's like I was watching 2 different movies, like,
Yeah.
you had all the people at Wuthering Heights, you had Nelly, you had all that depth going on and all that explanation going on over here, and then you had the Hollywood romance going on over here, and I'm
Very
like,
much.
they just don't fit,
Which overall, like, I didn't I didn't find them like terrible together or anything like that. I think
No,
some
no, they
people
were
are
fine.
exaggerating like that. I
Yeah.
thought they were fine, but I do think that this kind of proves too that you can put two of the most beautiful people in the world in a film together or on a screen together, and maybe their chemistry is decent, but it's not incredible. I was like, it was all right. It was okay.
It was okay, but I got the feeling that it was more of a friendship chemistry. Like at one point, like they sit
Yeah.
down together, like looking out over on like whatever, and Heathcliff is like laughing at Kathy because he's like teasing her about
Mhm.
something, and I'm like, see, like I see the
That
most
felt
chemistry
yeah.
in this kind of interaction between them,
It felt more natural than
Yeah.
anything, and it's why, like, it just is a question of chemistry sometimes. It's why we see certain pairs repeated on screen over and over again because, like, there's the filmmakers and stuff realize, like, damn, these two really work well together. It's why you get, like, your Ryan Goslings and Emma Stones and stuff
Yes.
like that, right? Because
Yes.
they work so beautifully together, and
Mhm.
you have, like, certain pairings like that to just come back over and over again.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's just it's almost like it's like these two people were in the film and they were beautiful, but it's almost like somebody told them to just focus on the physical aspect of things. And you're
And
like, "Ugh."
yeah, and it was interesting, like, there was this one moment, where she runs out of the house at night and Heathcliff
Yeah.
is, like, hiding in the garden and, like, they're making out in front of the window and
Yes.
stuff, and, like, her husband knows what's going on, and so he says, like, "Oh, you're gonna catch your death," and she's like, "Oh, I like the cold," and he says, "Yeah, but our son might not," and,
And
like,
he like shouts it in the
he, like,
direction of the
shouts it
bushes.
out, and, like, you see her face, she's kinda like, and she, like, looks off to the side. I felt like I was watching the Barbie movie.
Yeah, I know. Like it was like
Like, I
like I've broken the fourth wall now and it's weird. Yeah.
exactly, and I was just kinda like, "Okay," like, anyway, like, I think I've harped on about that side of things enough,
It's okay.
but
We have. It was such a strange. I can definitely see why this is such like a divisive sort of
yeah,
adaptation. Again, the adaptation part, give me quotations or don't give me quotations. It should have been you should have written the fanfic and then you should have made that movie. I think that would
yeah,
have been better. I think it would have made more sense, but that's unfortunately not what we got, so things are a little bit weird.
and I think,
Yeah.
like, for me, because I kind of like, I knew that they were vile people, but I kind of refreshed my memory about the characters more in depth after I saw the movie, so,
Yes.
like, in the moment when I saw the movie, I enjoyed it. I was
Mhm.
like, "This is really" like, it was fun, it was good, like, it's a good movie to watch, like, as a standalone,
Yeah.
but when you start digging, you're kinda like, "Oh, man," like
Yeah, I think that's it, and that's it. Maybe I fucked myself over by having like done this earlier in the week by like doing this stuff by getting back into it, refreshing a lot of my memory of like what the major plot points were and what the characters were actually like
Yeah,
in the novel with like these other versions and stuff. So maybe I kind of like ruined it for myself to a degree, but I'm kind of okay with that because it made me remember why the original story is so impactful and so well
yeah.
done. So I guess it doesn't really make me, too
But it's
sad.
fine. Like, I think it's like two different, like, experiences, right? Like,
Yeah.
one where you're fully aware of, like, all the background stuff and then how this translates to it, and then the other version, which is, like, I'm going in blind, I don't know what's going on in the
Yeah.
story, and, like, obviously, I knew what the story was, but, like, you know what I
But
mean? Like, I'm
it's been
kind
a
of
long
embellishing a bit.
it's been over,
Yeah.
like, 15 years since I read this book, so
Oh, it's been a while. Like, I read
yeah.
it in undergrad,
Yeah, that's it.
Um,
So, but look, that I was paying attention to things when I was at the screening because I saw this on Saturday. I will say that like this is something where maybe fully blind, if you've never read the book, if you don't really know much of what the story is about and stuff, it's something that might very well work for you. I was in like a semi-full screening. I went to like a matinee.
mm,
I was in like a semi-full screening. I had been paying attention a little bit to the audience in the theater because I was really curious as to what other people's reactions to this would be.
mm.
There were two separate girls in two separate groups, one kind of in front of me and one off to the side, that were crying at the end of the film.
Yeah,
So
because
I'm like,
if
well,
it's just a romance, like,
it's
if you
sad.
just take it as a romance for the sake of a romance, then yeah, it's fucking sad,
It is.
like, it's a sad ending.
Yeah, I think that was my thing is that I tend to judge things because I'm like a big crybaby. So I tend to judge things in when I see a movie adaptation or no, it doesn't matter what it is. But I tend to judge things by like how emotional did I get during this? Like, did I start crying at some
Mm,
point? Because very often I will if I'm emotionally affected by it. No, I did not. There was not a tear to
yeah.
be shed for me. So because I was just kind of like, oh fucking hell, and now they're gonna end it this way.
Yeah, I know, it was very funny because I was in the theater, it was, like, midnight because it was a
Yeah.
super late showing. There was no one in the theater, we were in the crappy movie theater up the street,
Yeah.
and, like, 3 minutes before, like, you know, like poor Jacob Elordi is like pouring over Catherine because she's dying. My mom's like, we should start getting our coats on because this is just gonna end very abruptly and then we're gonna need to leave. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, there's a whole other part of the story that needs to come along, you know?
No, ma'am, not in this case.
So she sat there putting on her coat, and I'm like, what? Because of all the foot traffic that's gonna come out with us, Mom?
There's no one here. Your mom
Christ, boomers, man.
Your mom is so funny. Oh gosh. Okay. Anyway, yeah. I don't think I can sum anything up anywhere else. This is such a weird mixed bag of a film for me that, like, I don't know right now if I have to like offhandedly give it a rating. I'm hovering at like a 4 out of 10. Like, it looks.
No, see, I can't do that because like there was effort put into it. Like, I gotta give it like a solid like 7. You know?
I'm basing it on my own opinion. I can't base it on the effort that people put in and stuff like that. I have to base it on how I felt about it. So it's like a 4 out of 10 for me right now. I'm like, I would never watch this again. I will listen to the soundtrack on repeat, but I will never watch this film again. I won't care enough to do so.
Yeah, I enjoyed myself, I will say.
Yeah. I did not. Sorry. We left the theater and Arthur was like looking at me. He's like, "You're annoyed, aren't you?" I was like, "Oh, I'm so annoyed."
Oh, as soon as the movie ended, I was like, "Oh, Megan's gonna hate this."
I hated it. Yeah. I was like, "Oh God, okay, this was not good. I did not like this." Yeah. I get it. I get all the negativity now, everyone. I understand. I'm with you. Anyway. I think we'll have a little bit of a week next week to do a bit of a chat, which we've not done in a while. So that'll be nice just to change things up. And then end of the month, we've got the second half of Bridgerton. This is like a whole period piece month for us.
It really is, actually.
I know. It's crazy.
Actually, in Wuthering Heights, when they show the Linton house, I'm like, is that it looks like Bridgerton the way that they
Bridgerton
did it.
House? Yeah. Or is that like my cottage or something? What's that? Yeah. It's true. Oh God. Anyway, check out all of that. I'm sorry, we've been prattling on for ages. We've been at this for like an hour. So check out everything we've got going on over on our socials and stuff like that, where we're talking about all of this too, at fullybookedca. You can find us everywhere. And you can always check out the website at fullybooked.ca, where we've got all the episodes are saved there. You've got reviews. We've got recommendations of upcoming stuff. We've got all kinds of things going on over there. So that's always a fun thing if you want to check that out too. But until next week, guys, keep on reading.
Thanks, everyone.